Hi everyone, this is Julie here to talk about toxic online disinhibition and the possible motivations that drive this behavior. Online communities have existed for decades, whether it is in multiplayer video games, social media, forums, or chat rooms. Especially since the spread of COVID-19, more and more people are coming online for social interaction during quarantine. While technology gives an opportunity to connect with people you may have never encountered otherwise, and bridges many people far and wide, it also sets up an environment that can motivate toxic online behavior. So, just a bit of a content warning here, I'm going to talk about a suicide that happened earlier this year. Some of you may have heard of previous examples of cyberbullying affecting people in real life. For example, earlier this May, the New York Times reported on the suicide of Miss Hana Kimura, the star of a reality TV show, Terrace House. After a heated moment on the show, and this show is often thought of as more realistic than other TV shows, viewers took to their computers and phones to degrade and villainize Miss Kimura. In combination with the stress of quarantine and social isolation, Miss Kimura took her own life, bringing the subject of cyberbullying to focus in the news media in Japan and the US. While Hana Kimura's suicide was the first of such instances on the series Terrace House, the cyberbullying and harassment of cast members is not new. The New York Times reports that cast members are often harassed online, such that they would bond and support each other over the hate they received after each episode release. This toxic behavior is unfortunately not uncommon in online communities, but contrasts from how communities interact in real life. So let's talk about what about online communities could lead to so many people to harass and bully strangers online. So that's the big question for this video. What could motivate people to push a stranger to suicide? As is evident by the many deleted hate posts after a victim's suicide attempt, people who previously partook in cyberbullying probably don't want to associate with the consequences. Despite the multiple death threats and messages instigating suicide, it's a wonder why such consequences come as a shock to audiences. This leads us to believe that the motivations that drive people to cyberbully might not be so direct as wishing someone's death and suffering. Several studies have been done on toxic online disinhibition, trying to find the reason why this phenomenon occurs in online settings. Researchers from the University of Haifa in Israel studied the effects of anonymity, invisibility, and lack of eye contact on toxic online disinhibition. While all of these factors can contribute to toxic online disinhibition, they found that lack of eye contact was the chief contributor to toxic behavior. When we're in person, we pick up on cues that respond to what we're saying. We get facial expressions, verbal cues, and body language, including eye contact, to let us know how we're being received, and we react accordingly. In person, it's a two-way mix of both verbal and nonverbal cues to communicate, but online, that feedback is cut off. Additionally, the lack of eye contact adds to the personal sense of anonymity, convincing people that they can act free of judgment. This sense of anonymity adds to the effect of ephemerality, a fast stream of information drowning out posts and noise that can make one feel that what they post doesn't matter. The popular image board 4chan is a prime example of this on their board B. For those who aren't familiar, B is an image-based forum where the average post lasts 5 seconds on the front page before getting drowned out by other posts, and an average of 5 minutes active before it totally gets drowned out and the page redirects to a 404 error. Almost anything goes on this board. So long as it doesn't break any laws, the board's format encourages experimentation and vulgarity. At the same time, users on 4chan are by default anonymous, without even an ID or an account to associate their posts together. Users forego identity for a sense of community, and instead build their connections through lingo and familiarity with 4chan culture. This mix of anonymity and ephemerality, as was studied by researchers from MIT and the University of Southampton, was the key factor that convinced its users, hey, post whatever you want, it won't matter in 5 minutes anyways. Despite the lack of a consistent identity in online communities, there's still a sense of internet culture. I already mentioned how researchers found that the stream of anonymous users on 4chan can still build a type of social hierarchy using lingo and knowledge of 4chan history and meme culture. But there's also attitude mirroring that takes place in online communities. The International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health published a research article that examined the associations between being a witness and a perpetrator of online hate. Researchers Sebastian Walks and Michelle Wright found that regardless of whether a person was a victim of online hate themselves, a witness of online hate is more likely to become a perpetrator of online hate, especially when there is toxic online disinhibition involved. There are several factors one could generally name to try and explain this, be it believing that this is how you're supposed to act in this environment, witnesses believing that this behavior is okay for them to do because they saw others doing it, and so on. The fact of the matter is that when a community is built tolerating toxic online behavior, those who join may believe that to fit in with that community, they should also act similarly. With this in mind, let's bring the discussion to the highly ephemeral, semi-anonymous activity many people are taking part in, especially during quarantine, and that is video games. League of Legends has a bad rap for being a nest of toxic, flaming, and aggressive players, but this kind of toxicity is not uncommon in many multiplayer gaming communities. First, let's consider the gaming environment. Online disinhibition is enhanced when there are elements of dissociative anonymity, invisibility, asynchronicity, solipsistic introjection, dissociative imagination, and minimization of authority. Well, in the average multiplayer video game, our true identities are hidden behind usernames and avatars that can easily be swapped out, changed, and molded into an altered self. While there may not be total asynchronicity in actual gameplay, there exists asynchronicity in other ways communities interact, forums, direct messages, etc. Despite having other people move different parts around, the experience of a video game is held only by the individual player. The messages they read and send, the things they see and hear, all that is on their screen is experienced in their head. While someone else's communication may be sent with one intention, going through the filter of one person's mind, the connotations and tones may be received differently. Additionally, with video games is the escapism aspect, where players can depart from their IRL persona and experiment with different alter egos. Online, they're not the average Joe with responsibilities and modesty, but can brag, flame, and boast as a competitor in the online arena. While not everyone who plays video games and gets exposed to these factors ends up becoming a cyberbully, studies have shown that those who tend to spend more time playing video games may fall into toxic online disinhibition. Video games are there so that we can have fun and be part of a community, but there are also cases where video gaming can become problematic. Researchers from the University of Birmingham studied the effects that low self-esteem has on playing video games. They found that escapism was a big motivator to playing longer hours of video games, especially for players with lower self-esteem. A person with low self-esteem especially has specific needs in their lives. They may be driven by a need for achievement as well as a need to not fail. When a person lacks self-esteem, winning at a video game can help give a person a sense of accomplishment and value, a short-term reward for their short-term effort. Likewise, when someone else is getting in the way of that reward, that makes it much more the insult to the player. Emotions arise and things can get pretty messy if players are stuck in their alter ego, forgetting that the player on the other side of the screen is also a real person. Gloating about wins and flaming others for lack of skill can also add to fulfilling this player's need to feel better about themselves. Those researchers from the University of Birmingham also found that those with higher self-esteem tended to not be as affected by the escapist motivation in games. When not as motivated to play games to build that sense of accomplishment, players simply don't play as much, and are thus interacting with the community less. Another interesting study was done by the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin, where researchers examined personal distress as a mediator between self-esteem, self-efficacy, and loneliness with problematic video gaming in both male and female adolescent gamers. They found that adolescents with more personal distress were more likely to struggle with problematic video gaming. This makes sense as earlier with the self-esteem, but then you also bring in self-efficacy, the sense that one has control over their life and environment, and loneliness, the negative feelings from a lack of community, and now you have a myriad of needs adolescents have while maturing that is easily filled with video games. Now, this isn't to say that everyone who plays video games lacks self-esteem or is lonely, or that enjoying video games because it gives a sense of community and makes you feel skillful is a bad thing. The problem comes when there are all these different people with different motivations playing video games, mixing together in combination with the online disinhibition. When it comes to video games, The online disinhibition makes it difficult to empathize with others in the game. You see their avatar, their text messages, maybe in some cases you'll hear their voice, but players miss out on the body cues, the expressions, the eye contact to know the effects of their words and actions on other players. When you have this community of people, with many choosing to act more maliciously and arrogantly online, this sets the tone of the community for new members as well. Those joining to fulfill their needs of social interaction are going to see that this is how people communicate, and may be more inclined to join in. How many times have you heard that League is a toxic game, and watched streamers who flame teammates and opponents to entertain their audiences? Looking at B on 4chan as well, when you make people anonymous and give people a platform to try different personas, a specific culture will build up where people can be expected to act more brazenly and to have more aggressive mannerisms. As such, newer people getting into online communities and games might not have so dire a need to meet self-esteem and self-efficacy needs, but may feel the need to belong to a community, and to do so, fall into the pattern of toxic behavior for clout. And how about non-video game online communities? When you have communities set with specific ideals and a culture of calling out unacceptable behavior publicly, you potentially have whole mobs of people attacking anyone who may have had a transgression, even long after the event. Those joining in on the onslaught may feel that they are part of the community of people with certain ideals, but forget that the target is a single person whose suffering might not be publicized before it's too late. There can be many different motivators that push people to play more video games and to act maliciously towards other players. Especially with many of those who spend more time playing video games experiencing personal distress, it may be difficult to eradicate cyberbullying as a whole with the game design. While we can depend a bit on the report system and moderators to help keep online communities from becoming wholly toxic, it is also up to individuals to speak up and counter this behavior to protect the victims of cyberbullying. This is everyone's community to take part in away from their offline lives, and to keep things welcoming to all, interventions are needed to stand up for those who may be targeted by toxic online behavior. That's all on my part for discussing possible motivations behind cyberbullying and toxic online behavior. I hope this helped you understand a little bit more about why people are toxic online, and made you more aware of this as an issue with any online community. To learn more about cyberbullying, please check out the next video in the series linked below, and let me know if you had any comments in the comment section as well. Thanks for listening!